Hello and a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. Coming up in the show, Kurdish fighters free Kobani from the Islamic State group. We look back at the battle for control of the strategic town on the Syrian-Turkish border. Captured on camera by 500 Syrian children, the reality of living in refugee camps as the war in Syria is close to entering its 5th year. And we bring you down the old Silk Road to visit the once dazzling capital of ancient Persia. Isfahan is once again drawing the crowds, foreign tourists this time. Kurdish militia claimed control of the Syrian town of Kobani, ousting radical Islamists of the Islamic State group after months of fighting. Some jihadists are thought to be lingering around the town, but for now at least the battle inside it are thought to be over. Oliver Farry reports.
A Kurdish flag hoisted on a hill overlooking Kobani. In the streets of the city, troops march and sing, holding flags aloft. Symbolic gestures and evidence the screw is tightening on the Islamic State group. The US military command announced that Kurdish militias had retaken first 70%, then 90% of the town. In Washington, the Pentagon hailed a strategic victory.
I'm not prepared to say the battle there is won. The battle continues. But as of now, friendly forces, I believe, have the momentum.
The US and its allies are remaining cautious as Islamic State organization troops are still present in the city's surroundings.
The whole city of Kobani has been taken. There might be some places around Kobani that are still in the hands of the Islamic State group, but all the strategic places are in the hands of the Peshmerga, the fighters from that area, and the defenders of Kobani.
This Syrian city on the Turkish border has become the symbol of the Kurdish battle against the jihadists. 4 months ago, the Islamic State organization overran local fighters and conquered a large part of the city. More than 200,000 residents fled the fighting. International coalition airstrikes managed to stem the advance. Meanwhile, neighbouring Turkey called for a no-fly zone.
Kobani will fall soon. This terrorism cannot be neutralized with airstrikes alone.
Ankara, however, blocked Kurdish volunteers from crossing the border to defend the city. Demonstrators massed along the frontier were dispersed by police several times. Eventually, Peshmerga's Kurdish Iraqi fighters arrived as reinforcements. They were welcomed as heroes on their arrival and were instrumental in turning the battle around. More than 1,800 troops are believed to have died in the fighting, including more than 1,000 jihadists.
Meanwhile, the Islamic State group still holds a Japanese journalist captive. After killing a second Japanese hostage at the weekend, IS now proposes a prisoner exchange for the release of Kenji Goto. His life for the freedom of a woman on death row in Jordan. Letting her go is a difficult decision for a man in more ways than one. Public opinion is thought to be against it, and Jordan has its own hostage to save, a pilot also captured by the same group. Olivia Salazar-Winspear reports.
Sajida al-Rishawi, Iraqi jihadist. She's now become the latest bargaining chip. The Islamic State organization are calling for her release in exchange for their hostage, journalist Kenji Goto, pictured here. On Saturday, Goto was heard in a radio broadcast asking his government to secure the release of Sajida al-Rishawi. The suicide bomber was convicted for her participation in the attacks carried out on November 9, 2005, when a series of blasts destroyed 3 hotels in the Jordanian capital, killing dozens. She was given a death sentence and is currently in prison. In a televised testimony, she explains how she was unable to activate the explosives attached to her body.
My husband and I went into the hotel. We both went and took up different positions. There was a wedding, children, women and men. My husband blew himself up. I wanted to do it, but it didn't work.
Since then, Sajida al-Rishawi has become something of a hero for other would-be jihadists. Since becoming a key figure in the negotiations to free Kenji Goto, the Islamic State has dropped its call for more than $200 million in ransom.
She belongs to a very powerful Sunni group in Iraq. In the past, she was married to leaders of the Islamic State in Iraq. That's the predecessor to the current Islamic State. And al-Qaeda has already tried to negotiate her release.
Afia Siddiqui, also known as Lady Al-Qaeda, is another among the well-known faces of female jihad. The Pakistani scientist, pictured here during her trial, was sentenced to 86 years behind bars for attempted murder. Today, Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State organization demand her release and have evoked her case when decapitating their hostages.
A bloody Sunday in Cairo as Egypt marked the 4th anniversary since the uprising that ousted Hosni Mubarak from power. At least 20 people were killed, more were injured and hundreds arrested. Tensions are high as many accuse Abdel Fattah al-Sisi of sending the country backwards in terms of authoritarian rule. Sisi was elected president last year, having ousted President Mohamed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood in 2013. Heads of state from around the world have been flocking to Saudi Arabia, all wanting to pay their last respects to the late King Abdullah and indeed to meet the new crowned leader, King Salman. US President Barack Obama cut short a 3-day visit to India to make a stop in Riyadh, a long-time ally of the US and the world's leading oil supplier. Saudi Arabia is also seen as crucial in helping fight unrest in neighbouring Yemen. Well, now a glimpse at the sometimes hidden corners of refugee camps and the daily reality for those living there. 500 Syrian children living in camps in Lebanon were given a disposable camera and some basic training in photography last year. Mariam Saab shows us the result.
500 snapshots of the lives and through the eyes of 500 Syrian children, supplied with disposable cameras by UNICEF and photography organisation Zakira. The Lahza 2 campaign, Arabic for a Moment, sets out to frame the realities of displacement.
I took a lot of pictures, capturing moments like when the electricity went out and we all huddled around candlelight in the camp, and when we found a steel drum to warm our hands over a bonfire.
The project's mission is to teach children living in camps how to use a camera, compose an image, and to channel their daily struggles into art.
I took this picture and one of my brother. They asked me to show them the pictures, but I couldn't as the images were still in the camera. I photographed my brother so that when we're older and back in Syria, we can remember how we lived here.
The program is the follow-up to Lahza 1, the same photographic outreach but targeting Palestinian refugees.
Palestinian refugee children living in Lebanon can lead relatively normal lives. The situation's completely different for Syrian children in camps. They've just escaped war and violence. It was difficult at first to connect with them. Firstly, most didn't warm to the idea of the camera, and they don't know much about photography and photographers.
As the Syrian civil war grinds toward its 5th year, more than half of its 3.8 million refugees are under 18. Here, a picture speaks 1,000 words, framing an adult world through a child's lens.
Isfahan in Iran is also called the city of half the world due to the richness of its history. It boasts Iranian architecture that dates from the 11th to the 19th century, including a 16th century mosque and a royal palace from the early 17th century. Isfahan today is mainly known abroad as the site of Iran's biggest nuclear research facility, but since relations with Iran and the West begin to thaw, this could change. Tourists are travelling there in greater numbers than ever, as Luke Shrego reports.
It's a world right out of 1001 Nights. Where the call to prayer takes on a poetic tone. 2,000 years old and twice the capital of Persia, Isfahan's been a difficult city for Western tourists to reach in years past. That's been changing in recent months though, with foreign visitors admiring its ornate courtyards.
These colors are so beautiful.
Civilization began here, but it stayed here as well, with enormous beauty and wealth of culture. It has to be seen.
Foreigners are becoming an increasingly common sight in Isfahan's bazaars.
Claudia, you're so pretty, they're so sweet.
Since Iran's government decided to open its borders to foreign tourists and their wallets, numbers of European tourists have more than quadrupled.
You've got to come see these super rugs.
In an otherwise troubled Middle East, the Islamic Republic is taking steps to redefine its image.
Look at the colors. I can feel there's romance in Iran. I can feel there are still poets in this country. You see these people drawing, reading in the gardens, smiling. Even the women who are wearing veils, they smile at you.
Isfahan's a town apart. A green oasis of culture lost within a modern Iran. The Zayenda River cuts right through the city. Its bridges are a meeting point for young people, like this student who's come to meet and talk to passing visitors.
I love this place because the noise and the water are very calming. So I can wander around and talk to people, tourists, about their culture and the countries they're from.
As far as opening up goes, the proof's in the pudding. Numbers of tourists heading for Iran have now overtaken Iranians travelling west for the first time since the Islamic Revolution 35 years ago.
Well, that brings us to the end of this week's show. Do take care and see you again next time.